So you've decided to admit to the world that you've got the hots for crazy chicks, or you're just a filthy meta slave and got swayed by the talk saying she's power creeping Dill, but you're lost on how to go about making her the happiest woman alive. Rejoice, for you've clicked on the right video to solve your simping needs. This video will go over her kit as well as gearing and value of her signature and Eidolons for the most dedicated ones. Because I relate to not wanting to waste time, timestamps will be included, so feel free to hop around to the sections you're interested in. Tables with numbers from time to time will also be flashed for you nerds out there, and the workbook will be linked in the description. With that said, welcome to the best, finest, top, prime, creme de la creme, jewel in the crown, ultimate, supreme, bombastic, insane JINGLIU guide to ever grace your ice and sense. JINGLIU is a 5-star destruction unit that basically behaves like a tank, wherein she hits so hard with shells loaded but also has windows where she deals like peanuts, like a tank in reloading phase, and basically does very little. On top of it is her sucking the life force out of her friends whenever she's mad and making a wreck out of the enemies like a toxic relationship, destroying and messing up the lives of people around her. Thankfully, she isn't as bad as your previous girlfriend, which you probably never had. So a more appropriate comparison would be your bully in high school who kept taking your lunch money, putting your bag on top, stacks of mono block chairs, made you run errands and do their homeworks, else you'll get beaten to a pulp outside after classes. But we'll get to that later. JINGLIU's kit in a nutshell has 2 things involved: dissociative identity disorder and balls. JINGLIU on the surface starts out as an innocent, prim and proper ladylike woman whose habit is to cover her mouth and doesn't fart nor take a shit like a normal woman. But little do people know, she has a weird hobby of collecting balls and has one of it inside a locked vault hidden behind her closet. We will call this her lady mode, and using her technique grants her that 1 free ball at the start of combat. Every skill used during lady mode grants her 1 ball. However, whenever she reaches 2 balls, her mental state goes haywire and her into what we call yandere mode. During yandere mode, she gains a ton of buffs such as attack, crit rate and damage percent on her ult. This is when she's batshit crazy and deals high amounts of damage. Every skill used during yandere mode this time around consumes 1 ball instead of generate. When her ball reserves reaches 0, she'll turn back into lady mode, losing the buffs gained from being yandere. Using her ultimate allows her to conjure up 1 ball out of her ass, which can either prolong her yandere mode or shorten her lady mode and allow her to go yandere faster. However, using her ult while in yandere mode allows it to deal massive amounts of damage, and using it outside is a huge damage loss, so try to always use it when she's insane. She also tends to hurt even the people who are trying to help her when in yandere mode, in the form of consuming a portion of her teammates' HP for her every action. This is pretty much the bread and butter of her kit, where she deals most of her damage while in yandere mode, uses her ult while in this state to have it do good damage instead of just making balls, and lady mode serving as her down team where she creates balls in order to go into yandere mode once again. With that out of the way, we can now go talk about building her. If ever you need someone to tell you what her mats are, I will just flash them on the screen now so we can go straight to skill leveling priorities. If you're strapped for resources, you can slightly prioritize her skill, level her ult and talent equally while maybe a level behind skill, and leave her basic at 1. But if I'm allowed to say so, do yourself a service and max out her skill, ult and talent anyway. And if you want to set yourself apart from the meta slaves, do the same for her basic like a true based individual. As for relics, we can talk about the Cavern sets first. To be blunt, most set bonuses in Honkai Star Rail are pretty dog, and can be matched or beaten by a few quality subs from a piece of a set that doesn't benefit her as much or at all. But if you want to dedicate extra miles for JINGLIU farming, which you should, then there are 2 best 4-piece sets for her as of version 1.4. The Ice set called Hunter of Glacial Forest, and the Quantum set called Genius of Brilliant Stars. Yes, you heard me right. The Quantum set on JINGLIU, when played with huge sources of defense shred like Pela and Silverwolf, is practically on par with the Ice set for the worst and general cases, while it performs noticeably more occasionally when against Quantum, which Silverwolf can help with. Without Pela or Silverwolf, Quantum set's worst case becomes weaker, and its gain when against Quantum weak diminishes, but it can be made up for by 2 to 3 more crit or attack percent substats. You can't go wrong with either, and how you view each Cavern's efficiency, depending on the other units you could also be farming for, and how you view the caveats for running Quantum set should be your main considerations. Mixed sets comprised of Ice, Musketeer and Messenger are also fine, with each 2-piece sets roughly equivalent to 2 to 3 crit or attack percent substats, with an asterisk on Messenger as its value heavily hinges on breakpoints and the playstyle. The equivalency of the 2-piece sets to substats is also there to tell you that even having a semi-rainbow setup is fine if the pieces are actually just that good. For Planars, Rutilant Arena and Space Sealing Station are your main options, with Rutilant being generally the better option on top of being paired with Broken Keel, which is also the best planar set for her teammates in general for damage. Space Sealing Station and Fleet for her teammates are also solid options, and feel free to use them if you have good pieces. But if you're planning on playing what we call Fast Bronya, which I'll go into later, you will likely not build enough speed to reach Space Sealing Station's speed requirement, so keep that in mind. As for main stats, you will want to go crit damage for the chest, speed or attack percent for the boots, ice for the sphere, and attack percent for the rope. Crit rate chest can be used in really edge cases where your pieces happen to not land on crit rate subs that much, but you have to be mindful to not overcap on crit rate when on Yandere mode, which grants her 50% with a level 10 talent, on top of external sources such as Fushuan, and potentially other future sources that would also give crit rate. Speed versus attack and boots is a complicated one, but some general pointers are to save good pieces regardless of it being speed or attack, lean towards one that has better substats, and most importantly, the one that feels better for you to play. If played with Bronya, you will likely want to use speed boots if you're going with the slower Bronya playstyle, and attack boots if with fast Bronya. More on this in the team comp section later. Attack sphere is technically viable, but the gap can be too big, ranging from 5 to 8 subs to match an ice sphere, for me to include it in the recommendation. Energy recharge rope is also technically viable, and feel free to try it, but her current energy economy and rotation doesn't need fixing to necessitate an energy recharge rope and smoothen things out. For substats, very standard stuff with her liking crit, attack and speed. Generally, crit rolls are the most valuable, with only a certain amount for crit rate, which is when it reaches the cap, followed by attack cent. Speed's value ranges from near useless to crucial, depending on the playstyle, situation, and breakpoint you're going for, but it's a fine to good substat to have in general. If played without Bronya, aiming for speed breakpoints such as a 120.1, 133.4, and 140.1 won't always count for something, but reaching these values is rarely a bad idea. As for the light cones, there are basically two main options. Her signature, I shall be my own sword, and on the fall of an Aeon. You technically can run other light cones, and they'll work fine. But let's make our lives simpler, shall we? With an S1 signature and S5 Aeon, the gap can be around 10 to 15% when against ice weak enemies, and 15 to 20% when not with things in favour of her signature. But Aeon regardless is a very solid free-to-play option, so don't feel forced to shell out money for her signature. JINGLIU will understand and respect your priorities if you don't have the means, my goal. As for Eidolons, her E1 and E6 are the most notable ones, with E1 being a nothing burger at its baseline, but is a cracked steroid in a theoretical pure single target scenario, while E6 essentially delaying or even removing certain lady mode window downtimes, which is extremely potent in practice. The rest are just cute and boring gains, and for that reason my personal recommendation as true stopping points are E0 with Aeon, E0S1, O1S1, E6S1, and for the absolute massive whales, E6S5. I recommend only going past E1 if you're planning to go E6, whether it be right now or eventually, and past S1 if you're an oil prince, or is about to die and want to use up all your possessions for the queen, and have fun before you pass away. Before we proceed with team building, do note that in order to cap out her attack buff, try to have a total of 10.6k HP across her 3 teammates minimum, and 11.6k HP if you're going for her E3. Now, while we can talk about her HP consumption mechanic and her SP consumption being more on the unique side, her teams still mostly boil down to the bog standard hypercarry compositions, where you either bring her with 2 offensive supports and 1 sustain for most content, or 1 offensive support with 2 sustains in high damage content, or if you want comfort. There are talks about dual carry teams with characters such as Blade, and I'm sure people will make it work, but I will not endorse them at least for now. For the offensive supports, characters such as Bronya, Tingyun, Pela, and Silverwolf are my most recommended picks, with Bronya being arguably the most potent but at the same time most nuanced, and for that reason I've decided to make an in-depth section for her in this video. There are generally 2 ways to play Bronya with JINGLIU. There's the fast Bronya and the quote-unquote slow Bronya. Fast Bronya is slightly less SP intensive, but its ceiling requires more investment on Bronya, mostly in the form of speed, while slow Bronya is the opposite for both points. Lower Bronya, speed requirement, hungrier for SP. Which playstyle does more damage? Contrary to what some people and calculations might suggest, I do not think that there's a correct answer that only says one or the other, as these calculations generally overlook factors, such as enemy HP thresholds and new wave soft resets, which are crucial as to which ends up performing better, and are built upon several assumptions that could easily make the conclusions derived from them to not match your situation. Both have merits, and I would highly suggest keeping your mind open to at least try playing both of them in different scenarios and seeing which one feels better for you. Fast Bronya playstyle has multiple forms, but the one that I'm liking the most is where you have as much speed and action forward sources for Bronya as possible, while you do not care about speed for JINGLIU at all, and where you use Bronya's basic for her very first turn, basic for whenever JINGLIU currently has 0 balls or moon stacks, and Bronya's skill for all the other situations. The specifics that I'm about to lay out are helpful if you're interested in zero cycling at least some MOC waves, but I would like to preface that if you're not that type of person, you do not have to feel bad about not reaching these guidelines, most notably the mentioned speed breakpoints, and that these playstyles will work as long as you're in the ballpark and within the descriptive points I gave. For the highest potential to zero cycle, with a level 10 talent on Bronya, you will need at least 163.4 speed on her if running 4-piece win set, or 175.8 speed if running 4-piece speed set. Lower Bronya talent levels will mean higher speed requirements for the threshold, and more speed will still always be better. Meanwhile, slow Bronya playstyle just needs Bronya to be slightly slower than JINGLIU and have her use her skill all the time. For zero cycling purposes, try to have Bronya at least 133.4 speed on any set combination that is not 4-piece wind, as the advance forward from it will mess up the tuning, and then have JINGLIU be slightly faster than her. Just enough for JINGLIU to go first then Bronya at all times. Both of these playstyles take up a lot of SP. As such, having things that would alleviate this downside, such as Bronya's signature light cone. But the battle isn't over, and her E1 will immensely help. Now as for sustains, let's talk about if you wanted to run just one since. In the case of running 2 sustains, it's pretty much run whatever, ideally from different paths. Due to her HP consumption mechanic, abundance characters intuitively fit the role more, especially for long, drawn-out fights. However, preservation characters like Fu Xuan may still work with enough investment to end the battle before anyone gets dangerously low on HP. Gepar can work too, albeit with an extra asterisk, since 100% advance forwards, which are present in JINGLIU's kit, and Bronya will cause status effects to tick down, and that includes his shields, causing your JINGLIU to end up bare naked, shieldless in certain windows. Now just for some short general tips for running other supports. For the same reason Gepard's shield will get consumed too quick, Tingyun's buffs will also face the same problems and cause her to have to use her skill more often, which can affect the SP economy. But it's not the end of the world, as you may alleviate it by having as much speed on Tingyun as you can. Do not feel bad to run defensive main stats such as HP and defense for the chest and sphere slots if you feel like it'll help her survive. Try to not use Tingyun's ult in windows, where it would cause either JINGLIU to ult while not in yandere mode, or JINGLIU to use skill anyway, while her energy is full, causing the energy generated from that skill to be wasted. S5 memories of the past, S5 meshing cogs, and but the battle isn't over are the recommended light cones. With Pela, knowing that enemy turns will cause her debuffs to tick, try to be mindful when you use her skill and ult. Ideally have them be applied on the enemies during JINGLIU's high damage windows. You can either use resolution shines as pearls of sweat, or before the tutorial mission. Starts and things will work great. I personally prefer pearls, especially at high superimpositions. But one could argue this demands more mindful decisions when in combat due to its defense shred, only lasting 1 turn and more chances to drop the ult defense shred in JINGLIU's damage windows, since her ultimate's availability may come after 3 turns whenever she doesn't do 2 skills, as opposed to tutorial that can allow 2-turn ults even with just 2 basics. You can have her built for damage via substats or relic sets, like having crit substats and equipping her with the ice set, but guaranteeing her debuffs by having at least 67% effect hit rate, and going first and fast in the action order by having lots of speed, and even 4-piece win set or 2-piece speed set are generally more beneficial, and prioritizing these are recommended. Yukong can work, but she's more for the advanced players due to her speed tuning being more sensitive than the others, on top of her buffs, particularly her crit rate buffs on high risk of losing value due to overcapping. Asta will work if you have her built, and although JINGLIU isn't really hungry for nor is lacking on attack, Her speed buffs while equipped with memories, cogs or dance, especially with Bronya, can allow or help solve potential 0 or 1 cycling issues people who are interested in it might encounter. That pretty much covers everything I wanted to include in the video. If anyone has questions, I'll try to respond in the comments section. Hope this video helped. Now move along, fuck right off, and have a great day.